Hey, everyone. Welcome to this special mini-sode that we're going to start doing once a month, where I answer questions that you've sent through Instagram, via email, or whatever other format you would prefer to communicate in. As always, I am your host and fellow producer, Carolina Groppa. However you found the show, thank you so much for tuning in and doing this live thing with me. We are gearing up to celebrate 5 years of the podcast, which is bananas. Truly, still can't wrap my mind around it. I've expressed this in many forms, but we'll continue to shout it from the rooftops. I'm so grateful to you all for tuning in and being a part of this dialogue with me. It's why I do it. Otherwise, I'm just talking into a void. Truly, I'm so grateful for you guys. And as I'm shifting gears in my own life and trying to figure out what the future of the podcast looks like in a way that's sustainable for me, we launched a Patreon recently. And I hope that if you're able to commit any amount, if the show has brought you value, whether you've been a longtime listener or a newcomer to the show, I hope you'll consider heading over to patreon.com/AngleOnProducers and contributing any monthly amount that you can. It really would help me tremendously to be able to continue to do this in a meaningful way. I'm trying to create space where I can still give back, still be accessible to you. So for $20 a month, you get exclusive bonus content and you get a virtual Carolina coffee corner where I'll jump on, answer any questions you may have. We'll dive deep into any issues that you're dealing with or producing questions, life questions, anything that you want to talk about. And I'll also have surprise guests for us. If that's you, if you can support, please head on over to patreon.com/AngleOnProducers. Thank you so much. This question came from a listener who prefers to stay anonymous, but she wrote in and asked, short film creative producers are often pushed out by directors' reps when the project is being pitched for feature or as a TV series. The reps will put fear in the director's mind that an established production company with a first look deal or financiers won't pick up a project if a producer who only has short films on their resume is attached. Because of this, paperwork to be attached is often frowned on by the directors for shorts. So if the powers that be are giving a shot to debut a feature director and writer, can they not also include a debut feature producer? She included a lot of personal examples of having had experiences working for directors for years early in her journey, being, part of Oscar qualifying short film festivals. And then when these projects land in at a company for a feature film version of it, she's been edged out, right? For a lot of different reasons. And so this is a very complex question. And for every one example and one answer, there's an alternate reality example. But it really comes down to a few things. There is the relationship that you've built with this filmmaker, right, as a producer, and how solid you are in that relationship. Oftentimes what happens is that directors want to bring their producers with them, but they're not allowed to, right? Because there's such a scarcity mentality in Hollywood that reps will say, oh, well, we don't want to have this producer attached who hasn't done a feature, who's going to be dead weight, I'm using air quotes, to the project and could potentially deter other producers from wanting to do this or other financiers. And it could scare a director who maybe has been a ride or die for you into making a decision that they don't really want to make because that's their shot. You know what I mean? And they're being told by the gatekeepers that the only pathway there is to leave their producer behind. So it takes a lot of conversations on the front end to make sure that that doesn't happen to the best of your ability. And then it takes having a writer director who's really going to go to bat for you. But the question becomes, what happens if that person goes to bat for you and in that process loses this opportunity for themselves, right? I don't agree with it. I don't think it's right. I think the culture is completely messed up. I think that if you have developed a relationship and you've truly developed the voice, the vision, the art, you are the proof in the pudding that you are a right creative partner and collaborator to this filmmaker who's only going to be a value add come the feature. So having your director be able to vouch for that and say, look, I understand to their reps or to whoever that you guys perceive my producer as XYZ, but here's why they are needed for my creative process. I got here because of them helping me do XYZ. And it's important that they find reps that understand that and are aligned with that, right? Again, it's tricky because there's so many elements and so many reasons why you could have all of these conversations and it could still fall apart. If you are not having these conversations throughout the process, that is step one. Make sure that you are being very clear and intentional about your desires. I'm answering this from a very global perspective because it's hard to quantify for every producer who's ever worked on a short film with someone, what their value add was to that particular process. But if you are like this listener and you have really strong feelings about this, that is something I would absolutely want to try. Now, yes, it is rare that filmmakers will want to sign any agreement with you for their short because, again, everybody's looking out for their next best opportunity, which is why I always talk about, there are investments in relationships with people that are building, but sometimes you're just taking a job. You're just getting the experience. You're just getting another film under your belt to build yourself up as a producer and make sure that you have a track record of working with a ton of different kinds of filmmakers with a lot of different shorts that have all gone to different festivals, right? And it's almost like having multiple fires in the iron. Like one of those people will take you with them and you'll be able to rise into the next tier. This situation that this listener's talking about is also very common when you're even further down the line, where it's like, okay, you produced their first feature, you killed yourself to make something for $2 million. It's now sold at Sundance and the bigwigs come calling. Yeah, sometimes the producers don't get brought along for the ride. It is why the independent producing model is so messed up. There's no protection for producers. There's very little incentive. And really, what is even the financial upside, right? You're investing so much time, so much sweat equity into these relationships only to wave from the shore as your filmmaker takes off into the sunset. So I think it's about really being intentional and making sure that you are finding ways to attach yourself, having that conversation with that filmmaker who understands that, look, you're not here just to do a short. You want to do a short because it's a pathway to a feature. And I get that experiences like this have you not want to invest and work with filmmakers at these early stages. And so for this listener, you mentioned you're only focused on developing IP that you own and package yourself. I mean, yeah, I think that's part of it. You have to do that, but you also have to be scanning for all the other pathways that are going to help you get there. So make sure that you are zooming out of your own journey, taking inventory of where you're at, what you can offer in this next tier of where you're trying to go. What is that North Star for you? And, I wish I could take away all the pain and frustration that situations like this cause all of us on a human level, because it is truly, truly upsetting. I've dealt with my share of heartbreaks, a lot of grief, over the loss of relationships, things and projects and people I've invested years in that never amounted to anything. But it's unfortunately the name of the game and you just got to keep going. So I hope that helps clear it up a little bit. And like I said, that's just one perspective. Someone else may have a very different perspective to offer, and that is also valid. The next question is from listener Nina M. She asks, not many people have time to meet in person these days. In light of that, what are some recommends or tips you have for successful networking? It all comes back to intentionality. I've spoken about this on the show before, but first assess, what is your goal? Who do you want to meet and why? Are you looking for general information? Is it someone who's 20 years ahead of you career-wise and is a mentor type of person that you want to know more about how they got on that path? If so, have they done podcasts or interviews where they've talked explicitly about that? If they have you done the research to get really specific about which part of what it is that you want to know you want to use as your opening line to talk to them about it? So think about if you were in their shoes and you receive a general email of like, hey, Nina, I just think you're amazing and would love to pick your brain over coffee sometime. Who's going to respond to that, right? Now, if I get a very personal email that says, I have loved your work and have been following your career since blah because of these reasons. And recently I heard your episode on, let's just say Angle on Producers, right? Just for fun. Heard your podcast, heard you talk about this particular thing, and I'm struggling with X, and I would really love to know more about how you overcame blah, 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 how you achieved such and such. Would you have 20 minutes to hop on a call in the next few weeks? That is clear, actionable, researched, and specific. That's going to get you a response. Someone's going to say, wow, I don't know who this Nina person is, but I'm impressed that she's taken the time to craft such a short and sweet, but again, specific and intentional email designed for me. This isn't a copy paste, want to meet everybody. So if that's your goal, is just to get information out of someone, that's one way that you can network. And yes, you can cold email, anybody these days, message them on LinkedIn, find them on social media, but you only get a few shots at that first opening and that first impression of you. So make sure you're coming across in the way that you want to be seen and in the way that the people that you're after are going to feel compelled to respond to you, even if it takes them a while because they're busy. If, on the other hand, you're trying to meet your peers, networking with your peers, then I think that there are many ways you can, especially now that we're on the other side of COVID, that you can find events and mixers. If you're an Asian woman looking to really network with other Asian filmmakers, if you want to get really specific, there's no shortage of organizations that really cater to that specific group of people that you may be wanting to meet more of. Like I get a lot of questions of like, oh, I'm new to town. I want to meet more of Latinos, more Latina filmmakers. Where do I go? There's so many places that you can go that just by starting researching there and going to their free meetups and joining their newsletter and being on their social media, like you'll just be completely overwhelmed by the amount of people, right? That's why, again, it's discerning what is your intention, what is your goal, so that you don't get lost in just meeting a bunch of people for no real reason that isn't helping you get to where you are trying to go. So have that question really clear for you, even if it changes in 3 months, or this is the month where you're going to network for this reason. You need a job, or you are wanting to transition from production to development. You're trying to get inroads. Like, who can help you with that, right? So make those lists. Be intentional, and then think, if I was being approached by a stranger, how would I feel about this message? Would it make me compelled to respond? All right, so this final question comes from listener James S. He asks, what are the pros and cons of just diving in and going the indie film producer route versus trying to work your way up as an assistant at a production company or studio? Oh, how can I answer this succinctly? It depends on your bandwidth for the unknown, right? Things you should know about yourself. If you prefer to have a steady paycheck every 2 weeks, to have a more clear line of a direction for your career, certainly going to work at a production company, a studio, starting at an agency, and then going from there is going to help you fulfill that need for a sense of security, if that is important to you, which no shade. Everybody's got their comfort, right, with the unknown. But these are important things you should know about yourself, right? Because it will be nice to have a job, perceived security, but it's grueling, it's demanding, and it's nonstop, right? And you're starting at the very bottom of the totem pole, working your way up. Now, the one benefit of working at an agency, production company, studio, etc., is you're going to get exposed to a lot of people much more quickly. You're going to grow your network infinitely faster than you are as an indie film producer, depending on who you are, right? Say we have a person who is not independently wealthy, who's out here grinding it out, right? We're talking about that kind of a person, not someone who comes out here with connections, because that's a whole different thing. Just a normal person with a dream and a goal. When you start out as an assistant, all those people are eventually going to rise up with you. That's the point. And they're going to go and be scattered throughout the industry. So when you blink and 10 years have passed, you're going to know executives at all different levels across the industry of people that you came up with. When I went in-house as an executive, that was one of the things that I realized, like, oh, I don't have this deep network of people that have been ride or dies, that we've trauma bonded. As some people say, we came up, grinding it out, working those crazy hours, making 2 cents to survive in LA, really getting each other's backs, like navigating those early days of the journey. Like, I don't have those kinds of connections, right? Because I made my connections with people who were on the ground making things, not necessarily sitting in an office, just a different type of a journey, different type of person, different kind of network that you end up with. But that is a huge pro, right? You're going to walk away with such a vast network of people, deeper knowledge, and particularly with the agencies, they are the information hubs of this industry. They know more than anybody, the big three. So you have to really discern what is important to you. If you want to go up more traditional route, work as a development exec who eventually starts producing, I think that's great. But my only thing that I urge people who go that route is to make sure at some point early in your journey, you get on a set. Go get physical production experience. Go PA. Go work in the makeup trailer. Go do things that are fun on the side, because you're only going to be better as a development creative person if you have that competitive advantage of having been on a set. And I've met a ton of people who have now been in this business for 10, 15 years and never really have been on a set in a really significant way and are now being, entrusted by their bosses to oversee production on a show, to work closely with the production teams of those shows, the production execs of those shows. And they're terrified because they're like, I don't know what to look for. Unless something's on fire, how do I know if things are going well? How do I know if we're on track and we're on budget? How do I get access to really develop a relationship with the line producer of a show? These are questions that friends of mine who came up on this side ask me because they don't know. And so the industry, unfortunately, does not require you to go have X amount of days before you can graduate, right, from assistant to CE level. You have to kind of create your own journey. And I think more and more as the market contracts, as we're going to be looking for people who are scrappy and savvy and really understand how to make things, not just how to develop things, it's in your best interest to go get that experience. And you don't want to go be a PA on a set when you're 10 years deep into your journey at already an executive level and having to go be a PA to understand how things really function. So that's my one advice for people who come up on that side. Now, the indie film producer route is a choose your own adventure. It is absolutely wild and extremely rewarding at its peaks, but very challenging at its lowest ends. It's the journey I went on. It's why I started this show. The lows are really low. They were for me for a variety of reasons that I've talked about on the show. And the highs were really, really high. I think the pro here is the freedom, right? You get to make your own schedule. You get to decide if you want to take vacation. You get to decide if you want to take a month off and take the foot off the gas. You get to carve out the life that you want for yourself a little more. Now, the flip side to that is people are going to keep hiring you because when you're on the job, when you're in production, it's like a traveling circus. My hat always goes off to people who live that lifestyle truly and spend 300 plus days out of a year going from show to show to show, because that is so hard. It's so taxing on your body, on your emotional health, on your mental health, all the things. But there are some people that just love it, and that's why they do it, But I share that because if you want to be an indie film producer, you could be one of the lucky ones that has a film that you make for pennies and goes to a festival and becomes that crazy outlier. But realistically, a lot of independent film producers have to work a bunch of jobs to sustain themselves, to be able to do the work, because as we've discussed on the show, it doesn't pay. The rate of return versus the investment that you have to put in, the years of investment of working with creatives, of putting projects together, they fall apart, the financing, you're at the mercy of what's going on in the market. At any moment, things could completely fall apart and you got to put them back together. You could blink and that's 5 years, right, of your life on one project. You haven't gotten paid a penny for that. So how are you going to sustain that lifestyle? Do you have the resilience that is required to do all kinds of odd jobs in the beginning of your journey to be able to sustain growing and carving out your own lane as an indie film producer? How I did it and how a lot of people I know do it is you work as a physical producer, right? You get hired as a line producer. You come up on the production side. Why? Because those jobs will never be taken away from the budget. They need those people to execute whatever it is you're doing, a toilet paper commercial, a branded thing, a music video. So production is production. Working with creatives is the same, though there's a different language. So it's a really good way for you to work production, get that experience, make good money while you're doing it, and start to meet people along the way that you get to go, they're doing the kind of work I want to be doing. Or I've been in narratives, I realize I actually want to do docs and unscripted. Like, this isn't for me. Like, you really get to see it from the arena, right? That's, I think, the biggest difference. You're in the arena playing the game versus oftentimes when you go up the other side, you're watching the game be played. And you're putting the players there sometimes to play that game. So it's, who do you want to be? What's most important to you? I think in a dream case scenario, you do both. You start out as a person who has that physical experience. You get lucky somewhere along the way and meet incredible filmmakers at film festivals, or you work with somebody on their first commercial and you develop a great bond and you go on to make their shorts and their features and you rise together, right? And then you can really solidify yourself as an indie producer. And when you do that, then those production companies and studios and agents come calling and they want to know who you are and bring you projects, and you can really start to rise the ranks. But it takes that one big hit. And how do you get that? Well, that's the big question, right? You have to be constantly putting yourself out there, searching for the material and being able to sustain yourself while you're doing it, because it could take a really long time. So for some people, that's not an option. They don't want to sit around and wait and play the lotto and financially be strapped for a long time. You could argue that both paths, you're going to start out being really financially strapped. But the difference is, if you're going up as an assistant, more on the executive side, you know financially what you're potentially going to make. You know what that ladder is. It's just a matter of, are you okay maybe being at a coordinator level for 5 years because there's no jobs for you to go to the next tier? So if you're a doer, if you're a person who likes to get in, roll up your sleeves, learn, very hands-on, I think the independent route could be very appealing to you. But if you prefer to be more cautious with the steps that you take, I think that there's a tremendous value in going up the more assistant production company studio route. Neither are good or bad. It just comes back to who you are, what's important to you, and if you had to pick the career of somebody to emulate, who is that person and how have they done it? Your career won't unfold in the same way, but it is a very good blueprint for where you're headed so that you don't get lost along the way. I hope those answers were helpful. We're going to be doing these once a month, and so I'll be posting on social media. But if they come up for you, email us and we'll just start collecting them so that we can answer these and hopefully do them weekly. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day, and thank you for doing this life thing with me.